Coming up on Bridge City News, the group which set up an unsanctioned injection tent site says it will continue to operate despite a recent fine from the city. The U.S. presidential debate took place last night between Trump and Biden. Political reporter Lisa Daftari says there were really no winners. And we hear from Samaritan's Purse, who has sent volunteers to help homeowners who've lost everything in the devastating California wildfires.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Thousands of people across Canada are wearing an orange shirt today. Each September 30th is called Orange Shirt Day. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly explains why this day is so important toward reconciliation.
Orange Shirt Day is a day to honor the experiences of thousands of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit survivors of residential schools. It's also a day to acknowledge the children who didn't make it home. Lethbridge College took part in the national event, this year virtually.
To remember the truths of the history, but not to place blame. It's to have open and honest conversations, to learn the stories and the triumphs and tribulations our grandmothers and our grandfathers faced.
Event speakers included people in Lethbridge who attended residential schools.
As young as I might be, I was impacted by residential schools. I attended the last residential school in Canada, in Lebret, Saskatchewan in 1998. And you know, there's a wide range of ages that have been impacted, you know, as young as I may seem, you know, to as old as our elders in our community.
The truth of that part of my life still hurts a bit. It stings, especially when other things come up like this week. But when I survived those 10 years, I wish for every child in Canada to know what really happened to the First Nation people.
This year's theme is Every Child Matters, past, present, and future. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
A spokesperson from the pop-up drug overdose site in Lethbridge says it'll continue to operate despite receiving a $300 ticket violating a city bylaw. The group, calling itself the Lethbridge Overdose Prevention Society, says it will appear to City Council to have the ticket rescinded. A tent was set up at Galt Gardens and on the field near Civic Centre last week, just days after the province revealed that our city has the highest per capita rate of opioid overdose deaths in the province. Last July, following an audit, the UCP pulled funding for Arches and the supervised drug consumption site. It was due to $1.6 million in funds that went unaccounted for. Government officials have since provided a mobile SES truck, which is set up near the soup kitchen. The Feed Lethbridge fundraising campaign turned out to be a huge success this year. The numbers are in, and just over $25,000 was raised, with every cent going to support the interfaith and Lethbridge food banks.
So fundraising is a core part of what we do as a nonprofit organization, and the funds that are raised from this event are going to go directly into our programs and services, emergency food hampers, cooking classes, garden programs, anything we're offering the community. You know, we were pleasantly surprised. This was our first time doing this type of an event, and so we had no idea how well the community would respond to it. We were very fortunate to have sold out of our meals. We also had great bids on our auction items, and even our 50-50 did well.
According to stats taken from the Interfaith Food Bank website, they serve an average of 935 adults and 603 children each month, so donations are needed year-round. Alberta businesses are among some of the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the province's agriculture community has been giving back. The AMA Backyard Barbecue jumped in to help by making an online Facebook event where the group encouraged the community to use and buy local products. There were more than 4,300 Albertans that joined the group, and the partners answered the call, donating over $16,000 to the province's local food banks.
We were fortunate enough to have 5 producer associations join us, and then a number of small businesses come on board to help provide really interesting content, talk about the importance of shopping local, things to look for in terms of where your food actually comes from, how to recognize Alberta and Canadian grown crops and produce and cheeses and even beers with local breweries. And we created a collaborative community environment where people could spend the summer learning from one another.
According to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, just over 18% of small businesses have seen sales go back to normal. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, charities across Alberta have been feeling the pinch. The Community Foundation of Lethbridge in southwestern Alberta has alleviated some of that pressure, delivering over $770,000 to 40 charities across the province from June to the end of September on the backs of 3 funding programs. The executive director of the foundation, Charlene Davidson, says in total, the foundation has awarded close to $1.2 million since April to charities across the community.
So our board of directors made the decision in March to allocate our money or some of our unrestricted funds to COVID relief and recovery in our community. And that really grew the government of Alberta because we had that program running. They launched the matching donation program, which brought in donations as well as support from the government of Alberta. The government of Canada launched the Emergency Community Support Fund, and we were also eligible to participate in that, which really, that's why we've been able to allocate over $1 million into the community to date, was just the 3 combined pools of funds.
For more information on the Community Foundation of Lethbridge in southwestern Alberta, make sure you visit their website. For the 8th year in a row, the Lethbridge Police Service and the Law Enforcement Torch Run will be hosting the annual Lethbridge Police Run in support of the Alberta Special Olympics.
We have the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon. People are coming today to pick up their packages that they've already signed up for, and we're just very excited. The weather is perfect for this race. The race starts tomorrow, because it's virtual. We'll give them until the end of the weekend, of the long weekend, to run it. They can upload their times if they wish to do so, or some pictures. It's more this year to keep the annual status going and to raise money for an amazing cause. I just want to thank all of our sponsors. All of our sponsors we put in the back. And this year we didn't go out to our sponsors and ask for money. We basically went back and said, hey, these sponsors in the past have donated on a regular basis. So we put a lot of our past sponsors on there. Some sponsors have given donations to that, but we know that due to COVID, a lot of businesses are hurting. This is not the time to go around asking for money.
Donations can be made without running, and all proceeds will go towards supporting more than 3,300 Alberta Special Olympic athletes. RCMP and Redcliffe were called out to a tractor-trailer rollover on Highway 1 west of Suffield yesterday afternoon around 12:20. Police say the truck burst a tire, the truck rolled, and the driver was seriously injured. Halo Air Ambulance transported the driver to the Foothills Hospital in Calgary. Now, during the investigation, police noticed several drivers taking photos with their cell phones, so 5 tickets worth $300 each were issued to those drivers for distracted driving. 2 people have been arrested and close to $20,000 worth of stolen property has been recovered by police in Medicine Hat. Alert says the arrest took place on September 24th after they received a tip about stolen goods at a home in the Gas City. Some of the stolen property include a van, bicycles, a cargo trailer, and lots of tools. Alert says the thefts were linked to property taken in Taber, Redcliffe, Bow Island, Medicine Hat, and Dunmore. 49-year-old Dallas McDougall and 45-year-old Christopher Penny face various charges. Warrants have been issued for 2 other suspects. 26 Albertans have been arrested and charged with online child sexual exploitation. Alert says in total, 63 charges were laid against men in 14 communities, including one here in Lethbridge. The investigation took place between June 20th and September 17th of this year. Alert says there's no definitive link between the suspects other than the nature of the offenses which were allegedly committed. Each of the suspects is charged with at least 1 child pornography offense. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, says backlogs in COVID-19 testing are a problem for finding positive cases and making sure potential contacts are traced as soon as possible. She warns, however, against letting politics interfere with the approval of new tests that can provide quicker results.
So let's just reflect quickly on Ontario. I think they've been doing a lot of testing, really accelerated, and their percent positive is still relatively low. So it's 1 point something, I don't know what it is today, which means they're testing a lot of people to find those positives. So refocusing to the targeted areas like the Torontos and the Ottawas and Peel, I think, those areas is really important. You can't distribute your testing too broadly, but really home in on supporting those areas where you're seeing those accelerations. So some of it is simply access. Having those extra access points like pharmacies might help, particularly in those cities.
Close to 3,000 people have died from COVID-19 in Ontario. The province still has just over 1,700 active cases of the virus. Health officials believe Ontario could hit 1,000 daily cases in the next few weeks. Ontario is restricting visitor access to long-term care homes in some of the COVID-19 hotspots, including Toronto. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says as of October 5th, Only staff and people deemed to be essential caregivers or visitors will be permitted in the homes.
We have made it possible for family members or friends to come in as caregivers. This kind of support is critical, and I encourage family members, friends, please sign up to be a caregiver, because showing up at a home for a few hours to help out is critical. It helps our loved ones, and it can help other residents as well.
Saskatchewan Party leader Scott Moe and NDP leader Ryan Maley launched their election campaigns in Regina. The prefixed election is slated for October the 26th.
Over the next 4 weeks, the Saskatchewan Party will be putting forward a plan, our plan for a strong Saskatchewan. It's a plan for a strong economic recovery. It's a plan to make life more affordable for families. And it's a plan for growth. And it's a plan for strong financial, fiscal management and a balanced budget by the year 2024.
The choice in this campaign is a choice between the Sask Party's plan, their plan for austerity, for cuts that will hurt families, that will slow down our economy, and our plan to invest in people, to get the economy moving again. And frankly, no, people shouldn't trust Scott Moe when it comes to the economy. He didn't even know we were in a recession, but people around this province have been struggling, have been hurting under Scott Moe and the Sask Party, and we absolutely need to make the investments in people right now. That's the choice before Saskatchewan.
There's a practice in Canada of our prime ministers flying on government jets. They do not even fly commercial for many of their vacations. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilley, discovered recently that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's staff haggled over $33 on a plane ticket. Lilley says it's fine spending billions of taxpayers' dollars, but when it comes to the PM's own money, well, that's a different story.
Going through these documents, they're not only saying that this is the lowest possible commercial flight cost, but partway through they said, the Prime Minister's office, and they redacted the person's name, they said to the Department of National Defense, can you check for flights out of Midway? It was a $404 flight, Hal, from Chicago O'Hare to Ottawa. That's a very good price, let me tell you, for a one-way flight from Chicago to Ottawa. They said, can you check Midway for cheaper flights? They found it $33 cheaper, $33.85. Why is the Prime Minister's office haggling over his money when they don't look after our own?
Catch the full interview with the always colorful Brian Lilley coming up later in our program. The U.S. presidential debate took place last night. It was a chance for President Donald Trump and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden to go head-to-head and explain why each one was the best candidate. Many believe it was quite acrimonious from beginning to end.
Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe.
Any objective view of that 90 minutes on stage was that the chaotic nature of what is nominally called a debate was almost entirely due to one of the three men on stage, and that was President Trump.
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
Clearly, President Trump has spent the campaign trying to frame Biden as weak, as old, too old for the presidency, a little addled, rattled, confused. Were there moments where you could say, well, he really knocked Biden off his game and Biden was a little rattled? Yes.
By the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically, and you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal.
One of our regular contributors, U.S. political reporter Lisa Daftari, says when it comes to last night's debate, there were no winners, just losers.
It was just a firestorm of name-calling and interruptions and no substance whatsoever. They really didn't give us any clear idea as to who's standing where. There were a lot of accusations. And I want to take to break this down step by step. First of all, I thought that Chris Wallace overstepped his position as moderator. I mean, there were not open-ended questions. It was more like a yes or no. Did you or did you not do this? Were you or were you not guilty of this? Did you or did you not take this position? Which is often good as a follow-up question when you're a journalist, but you want to ask an open-ended question, as you know, Hal, being really a wonderful journalist yourself. I mean, watching this was painful. I mean, how could it be that these are the two individuals that are up for the highest position in not only the United States, but really to have control over the free world in some capacity? Horrific.
Easing winds gave California firefighters a break as they battled a destructive wildfire that was driven by strong winds through wine country north of San Francisco. Close to 70,000 people in the area are under evacuation orders.
When we came back on yesterday morning, it was so surreal, and we had no idea the house was still there. So when we drove up and saw the house, we were kind of like, oh my God, this is a miracle. But just looking at everything else. So then we walked up the street, none of the neighbors were left. The lady across the road here, gone. All these people's things were gone. I mean, it was just like pure devastation.
The Christian organization known as Samaritan's Purse is helping homeowners in Santa Cruz, California, where hundreds of houses burned to the ground in the wake of the devastating wildfires. Volunteers are sharing God's love and sifting through the ashes to help homeowners find their personal treasures.
We started chasing fire from lightning strikes on the 16th. From then on, it was off to the races as the fire pushed towards the town of Boulder Creek.
The fire truck came and issued the orders that it was time to evacuate.
I walked outside and I could see this orange haze over the mountain.
We had leaves coming down that were almost on fire.
They were crisp and they were landing all over the place, so we knew that it had to be fairly close.
I've never seen anything like it, chunks of ash and burnt things falling all over the property.
We had to get out and do it immediately.
Everybody was evacuating.
And then we heard that this had been burnt to the ground. It was completely gone, dust.
Everything was completely destroyed.
It's like you've been through a war zone.
It's all gone.
It's all gone, yeah.
This is a historical fire. It hasn't happened in over 100 years. The impact has been great. We've lost several hundred homes. A lot of people have been displaced when they were evacuated, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't get to come home. It's been tough.
We're in Santa Cruz, California. In this particular area where Samaritan's Purse is serving, over 900 homes were lost. It breaks your heart. And as you meet the homeowners, they're some of the most wonderful people around. We've come to help them recover from this horrible fire, to help them sift through the ashes, to find some of those valuable items that might still be left behind, and show them God's love.
We're standing in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We're looking at the aftermath of a fire. This is absolutely surreal. And you meet people that have lost their homes, and it's like, what can I do? Where can I move? And I was just really praying for God to show me. And Sunday morning, when I saw it on social that you guys were coming, I'm like, this is it. And I just feel really blessed to be helping these families.
Great to see the Christian community helping out once again. We had kind of a mixed bag today. There were some light showers in some parts of southwestern Alberta. The clouds should clear out, and we'll see more blue sky for the rest of the week. Complete weather details are coming up. We had sun mixed with cloud today, and some areas around Lethbridge received some moisture. Tonight, mainly clear with a low near 1. Now here's Jeanette Rocher now with a look at how the rest of the week is shaping up.
Looking ahead to tomorrow, Thursday, we could see a high of 19 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Friday, sunshine, 19 degrees. The sunshine should last through the weekend as well for both Saturday and Sunday, with highs of 21 on Saturday and 22 for Sunday. A lovely 24-degree day for next Tuesday with a mix of sun and cloud, and partly cloudy skies as well for Wednesday with a high of 26. According to the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 18 degrees. The average low, 3. 33 degrees was our high temperature on this day back in 1992. That was a record. And our record low was -5 in 1985. Sun rose this morning at 7:30 a.m. and our sun set this evening 7:12 p.m. Looking ahead to the forecast for tomorrow across the rest of the country, West Coast should expect some haze, mix of sun and cloud in Victoria with a high of 22, 19 the high in Vancouver, partly cloudy skies. Partly cloudy skies also expected for Edmonton and Calgary with highs of 18 in Edmonton and 22 in Calgary. Over in the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon should see a high of 12 with a mix of sun and cloud, high of 11 in Regina and partly cloudy skies. Winnipeg's high 8 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Now over in Toronto, they should be seeing 60% chance of showers with a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm. 17 is the high, 60% chance of showers in both Ottawa and Montreal with a mix of sun and cloud as well. High for 16 for both of those cities. 20 degrees and lots of sunshine expected in Fredericton. 21 is the high under sunny skies in Charlottetown. A mix of sun and cloud expected in Halifax tomorrow with a high of 19 degrees. 2 to 4 millimeters of rain could be expected in St. John's, Newfoundland tomorrow with a high of 21 degrees.
The House of Commons passed legislation authorizing benefits for workers left jobless or underemployed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Bill C4 replaces the Canada Emergency Response Benefit with access to a more flexible employment insurance regime and for those who do not qualify for EI. Government officials estimate the new measures will cost $34 billion. The bill also includes another $17 billion in other COVID-19 related spending. It took around 4 months for Canada's economy to recover around 75% of its pandemic losses. Experts say repairing the damage could take several years. According to Stats Canada, economic output jumped 4% in July and August. That brought our gross domestic product to about 95% of levels in February, the last full month before lockdowns began across the country. The Conference Board of Canada said some industries like air transport may never fully recover, and the unemployment rate will not return to pre-pandemic levels until the year 2025. Analysts say retailers will require strong customer service along with loyalty perks and discounts to lure customers back to their stores amid concerns of a potential second wave of COVID-19. They say these initiatives are critical for the survival of non-essential brick-and-mortar stores. Industry analysts say retailers are rethinking store space to create some entertainment as part of the shopping experience. They say without the human connection, people are just going to keep ordering online. Ford is recalling more than 700,000 vehicles in North America because their backup cameras show distorted images or suddenly go dark. The recall covers most 2020 versions of Ford's F-Series trucks, also the Explorer, Ranger, Edge, Mustang, Escape, and other SUVs. The Lincoln Nautilus and Corsair are also included. Ford says that a poor electrical connection is the cause of the problem. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 90 points to 16,121. The Dow was up 329 points to 27,781. The S&P 500 was up 2753 to 3363. The Nasdaq was up 8226 to 11,167. Oil was up 57 cents to 39.86 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 2 cents to 2.55. Gold was down 12 cents to 18.85 US an ounce. Silver was unchanged at 23.24 an ounce. Wheat is at $240 per metric ton. Barley is at $235. Canola is at $513. Corn is at $260 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 35 cents to 108.85. Feeder cattle were down $1.58 to 141.35. Lean hogs were up 43 cents to 72.80. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly today to 75.07 US.
Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Feed Lethbridge fundraising event turned out to be a huge success this year. The numbers are in and over $25,000 was raised, with every cent going to support the Interfaith and the Lethbridge food banks. Local radio stations were involved, inviting people to come by and make donations during the campaign. Coming up, a Q&A with our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who chats with BCN's Jeanette Roche about why the U.S. pulling over 2,000 troops out of Iraq is a big deal. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Get to know your city and take part in the Lethbridge Scavenger Hunt. Download the Let's Roam Scavenger Hunt app, lace up your walking shoes, and head out with family to discover the best landmarks in Lethbridge. Put your navigation skills to the test while enjoying the journey at your own pace. No reservations, no tour guides, and fun for all ages. Visit letsroam.com/scavenger hunt. Bring your lunch and enjoy beautiful live music at the same time. Come out October 2nd to the First Friday Lunch and Listen concert series featuring performances by the University of Lethbridge Conservatory of Music in Cass's Community Room beginning 12:15 p.m. and ending at 1. First Friday events are an initiative brought to you by the Heart of Our City Committee. For a full listing of upcoming events, visit firstfridaylethbridge.com. Go back in time and see what it was like to live as a pioneer. Coyote Flats Pioneer Village is a Western heritage museum located 1.5 kilometers south of Pitcher Butte. Walk through the village and see a railway station, post office, fire hall, school, and so much more. The museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with admission of $10 for adults or $20 per family. Mobility scooters are available to guests by donation. For more information, visit coyoteflats.org. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
A bleak milestone was recorded on Monday in the U.S. Johns Hopkins University is reporting that the world has now seen just over 1 million deaths from coronavirus. Joining me now via Skype from Los Angeles to discuss this is host of the Foreign Desk and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Lisa, it's been almost 9 months now since the very first death in China of coronavirus, and now over 1 million deaths worldwide. This has spread fast.
Yes, it spread fast. It's continuing to spread. We're looking at places where the second surge is much worse than the first. And it was projected that we would hit these kinds of numbers, but they are so incredibly raw when you hear about them. In the backdrop of all the political talk, should we have shut down? Should we have not shut down? Should we wear a mask? Should we not wear a mask? Will we get a vaccine before the U.S. presidential election? Will we get one after the presidential election? I think it's important to take a moment to stop and say, what are the human numbers? Who are the human victims? And how has this affected businesses worldwide? Psychological upbringing of young children. I have a baby who the majority of his life has so far been in quarantine, and life is not back to normal. When we go out, he sees people in masks. This is a side effect as well. So when we look at these numbers, I think it's important to stop and really remember what kind of damage this has done to us globally without the political talk.
Right. It's so easy to look at those numbers, like you say, and just kind of see them as numbers and forget that those are actual real human beings. And of course, in the U.S., that number accounts for about 205,000 of those 1 million deaths so far, right?
Right. So, it's hit us really hard. And, again, there's always statistics about people. They had existing conditions, or they were elderly, or, we all know young people who died from this. We know people who, didn't have pre-existing conditions. So, again, those numbers are real, and they affect real people and real families. And, of course, it's hit major cities much worse than anywhere else. In Middle America, you don't see this being as big of an issue or as widespread, for many reasons, but mainly because of population and for lack of quarantining. But the coasts are very bad, major cities are very bad, and I think at least the good news is that here in the West, Canada, U.S., Mexico have done a pretty decent job at keeping the second surge at least looking much better.
Yeah. Are people in the U.S. taking the virus seriously? Like, I know we had the governor of Florida just kind of reopen the state. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. We here in California think our governor is taking it too seriously, meaning that if you do all the calculations, there is a step-by-step opening, and the real opening is the day after the election. So, you put this all together and you think, is this really about the people? Is this really about, what is this really about? Or is it shut down mainly? There's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of criticism towards the mayor of Los Angeles. There's a lot of criticism towards the governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom. There's actually a lawsuit being brought about by parents against Newsom for not opening up schools, for not believing in the fact that children need a minimal amount of education. They need to go to school. They need to open up. The statistics for opening up schools are so, it's very low, and the incidence is so low that when you look at the side effects of children not going to school, and those parents that have to deal with children not going to school, and the psychological effects, as I mentioned, these side effects happen to be much more in a place where we've contained it pretty well. But again, people have to take it seriously, and I think they do for the most part. You don't see big concerts and parties and things like that for the most part. I'm sure that people are trying to the best of their ability to not gather in large crowds, wear their masks as much as possible. But there should be, I think, in the words of Dennis Prager, who's a conservative commentator, radio host here in Los Angeles and syndicated across the nation, he said, we'll do our part and we'll wear our masks, but you do your part and you open society back up so that it can be fair for everyone and people can have a chance back at making a salary and making a life and having their businesses back up and running.
It's had such far-reaching effects, absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears here. It's been a contentious few days around the world. Many people have been killed in the last day or so in a little region that used to belong to the Soviet Union before it collapsed. I'm talking about the Nagorno-Karabakh region, and correct me if I pronounce that incorrectly, Lisa.
Pretty good.
Okay, so there's two countries fighting over this territory, and they've called for war. So Lisa, please discuss this in more detail. Why is the fighting there noteworthy, and what does it mean on a world scale?
Yeah, we haven't seen a heated war like this in quite a while, and the fires that are usually exchanged in the Middle East are between the Palestinians and the Israelis, or you'll have Syrian rebels against the others there, and there's a lot of overlap, but you don't see a heated war between nations like this. We haven't seen this in a very long time. This is about what Azerbaijan is claiming is an occupation of land within its borders that has been that Armenians live in. So they're calling this an illegal occupation, and they want them out. They've been living there, as you said, from the collapse of the Soviet war, and this has been home to them. So now they're exchanging fire, and you're seeing this really heat up very quickly. I think the casualties were over 60 the last time I checked, and I'm sure that will be going up if it already hasn't gone up. And it's important for a few reasons. First, it sets precedent. In that part of the world, there's a lot of, as I said, this overlap of borders and really people being indigenous to two lands, living on a border, a border or a more it's not so homogenous is what I'm trying to say. So people have their foot in both places, and you have people sharing cultures and languages, and you're going to see a lot of this. I mean, it's not the myth that we have had for many decades is that the secrets of peace in the Middle East lays within the Palestinian and Israeli fights, and that's not the case. And as we're seeing, as things heat up, we're seeing that this goes across and the reverberations go far. You also see Turkey getting involved. Obviously, Turkey has an axe to grind with the Armenians. They get involved whenever they can to fight their own enemies, like they do in Syria with the Kurds. You see the same thing with Turkey and Armenia, as have had years of contention and fighting between them, and genocide basically of the Armenians. And now you see them getting involved again, interfering, and I think this is going to get much worse before it gets better, because there will be interference, and that will take this to the next level for sure.
Right. Now, as you were saying, so both of these countries fighting over this territory have powerful allies, right? So you mentioned Turkey. Russia is another one who say that they're going to back them as they fight, right? So, I mean,
yes.
This sounds dangerous when you start getting countries like Turkey and Russia involved, and I believe Syria was thrown around in there as well.
Exactly. I think what's going to happen is that this entire Syrian conflict is going to get dragged into this. So that brings in this trifecta of the Iranian regime, Turkey, Syria, Russia, all getting involved. And what you're going to see flooding the area are these insurgent groups. And that's really the worst thing for any country, but particularly it has been the recipe for disaster for the Middle East, where there is a political vacuum or an area of chaos, and these insurgent groups get in there and they do not come out. So, I think Azerbaijan and Armenia should really think about this before they open up this little tiff between them to the region, because it's going to really import a lot of issues that they're going to wish they didn't have before.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at a different conflict, on Monday, 5 Iraqi civilians were killed, 3 children and 2 women after a rocket hit their house, which is located near the Baghdad airport. Now, the airport includes a U.S. military base, and it's often the target of attacks, right, for those that are opposed to American presence there. So, Lisa, this is causing contention as well.
Yes, so Donald Trump was very eager to get U.S. presence out of Iraq, out of Syria, out of places where the U.S. no longer really has a say or has any sort of reason to be there, and lives are being lost. So even this week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo even hinted at the U.S. embassy there being closed, and of course, right away there was this kind of uproar, and kind of, everyone got scared because they know that the U.S. presence brings some semblance of order, some sort of fear, some sort of intimidation, something. And here at the airport, that's why we have a lot of these attacks occurring near the airport, is because of the U.S. base being near there. If you remember, the shadowy commander Qasem Soleimani of the Iranians, who was killed in Iraq, was actually found near the airport as well. So a lot of important things taking place near there. So unfortunately, in this case, it was a civilian family that was in harm's way. But again, we hear these stories, and whether they're Americans or Iraqis, it's upsetting because it's for nothing, right? And it's really a matter of, were they trying to aim for the U.S. embassy? Were they trying to aim for the U.S. base there? Were they trying to aim for U.S. soldiers that were there? Probably. I mean, that's the repetition here. It is the Iran-supported insurgency there that is fighting the U.S. in another one of its proxy wars. Again, for people who don't understand what the Iranian regime has done throughout the map, and think that we should just play kumbaya with them, here is another example of throwing money, at the Iranian regime to bring them to the negotiating table. This is what President Obama did for years, and it just didn't work. They just took that money and put it into terrorism, and this is the result when you see those casualties, again, whether they're Iraqi or American or what have you. But this is the result of playing kumbaya with a dangerous regime like that.
Right. So is this raising the fear of a war with the U.S., basically threatening to pull out the U.S. embassy there?
Yeah, I mean, look, it makes a good case for it, right? Why should we be there? The next time it'll be an American, and as I said, the lives are valuable regardless of what culture and background they have. But when we put our young men and women into a country, into a situation like that, they should be safe and secure, or if they're in harm's way, it should be for a purpose. When we don't have a purpose anymore to be in Syria or in Iraq, then we have to, or in Afghanistan, then we have to reevaluate that purpose and say, why are we there? And if they're just in harm's way and we're not really controlling the narrative anymore, we're not helping to direct the future of that nation, then it's better off that we're not there and those individuals are not in harm's way. So let's bring them home.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, right as this is all happening, Lisa, just this weekend, Iran unveils a new surface missile with a potential range of over 700 kilometers.
Right, shocker, right? That they're still after having a weapon, that they're still after beefing up their military might, that they're still after getting closer and closer to the weapon. By the way, a report came out that by the end of the year, they should have enough nuclear material to be close to having a weapon. And of course, they're flexing their muscles once again on the international stage to say, look what we have, show and tell. This is real. This is real. The threat is real. And, the American people are going to go to the polls very soon. And I know that pretty often, if not every election year, foreign policy is way down the list. But it shouldn't be because of stories like this, because that we do have a global threat, whether it's North Korea or China or the Iranian regime. These are things that should be talked about. These are things that people should consider and should weigh on our minds because they are truly significant.
Yeah, such contentious times over this weekend. And I mean, we can turn our attention now, of course, to North and South Korea. So, Lisa, what's happening over there now? There was a shooting.
This is just it's like a soap opera if you're following it. Like, grab the popcorn, right? This is an interesting thing. North Korea accusing South Korea of kidnapping and killing a soldier. They are each exchanging barbs. They are, demanding that the other do an investigation. And meanwhile, they're just exchanging. Meanwhile, if you remember, it was South Korea who played kind of like the mediator, or like the go-between with the U.S. And North Korea when things were getting a bit warmer between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. It was South Korea that would always try to bring the two in, remain relevant, and try to soften the message that came from Kim Jong-un to keep Donald Trump engaged. So now you see them, the two of them going at it again. Obviously, historically, they're North and South Korea for a reason, and that fight just continues. But I think North Korea has a pattern of, getting itself involved in regional kind of tiffs to kind of as a distraction to take all attention off of its internal issues. And right now we know that Kim Jong-un is having health issues. There was even a rumor a few months ago that he passed, that his sister, who's even more of a tyrant than he is, if that's possible, would be taken over, and that the world started Googling who the heck is his sister, what is she going to do? So I think this is yet another way for North Korea to get into other types of headlines and take the attention off of itself for a bit.
Yeah, crazy times, 100%, absolutely. And with that, Lisa, we are out of time. Foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
As you've heard on Bridge City News, Canada signed a deal to buy up to 7.9 million coronavirus rapid point-of-care tests pending approval from health officials. To talk more about this in more detail is our political reporter Brian Lilly, joining me once again from Toronto. Brian, apparently it's not an antigen test, but the instruments used to analyze it can be run outside of a major lab, giving rapid results at a clinic or a hospital in the fight against COVID-19.
Yeah, so this is the second faster, I don't want to call it a rapid test, but it is a faster test that's been approved. There's been a lot of pressure on the Trudeau government, on Health Canada, to approve rapid tests. They're being used by all of our allies in Japan, in the United States, in the UK, across the European Union, and we don't have any here. So, I was interviewing Michelle Rempel-Garner, the conservative health critic, about this last week, and she said, we have similar approval processes as some of the countries that have already said, given these the green light. Why aren't they approved? Well, on Tuesday, Health Canada officials came out and gave a bit of the rundown, bit of a lay of the land. They approved one faster test last week on Thursday. They announced the second one on Tuesday and said others, including an antigen test from Abbott, which Premier Doug Ford calls a game changer for Ontario if it gets approved. Well, they said they're waiting to make sure that they've got all the data, that some of these manufacturers haven't submitted for approval in Canada, so they have nothing to go on unless they go out and proactively search for it. Given what we're facing, I think that's what they should be doing. But the Trudeau government clearly has gotten the message from premiers across the country, from medical officials across the country, get these things approved. We went from wait times in Ontario that were next to nothing. I could walk down the street to Women's College Hospital in the middle of downtown Toronto and get a test throughout the entire summer. And then suddenly, the beginning of September, long lines began to form, and they just got longer as people started to say, you know what, I need a test either for work or for school or just because I don't feel comfortable. There needs to be something to clear the backlog, especially as we see a rise in cases in a second wave.
This may be more provincial jurisdiction, but have you heard anything on the Hill from MPs potentially talking about making a potential COVID-19 vaccine mandatory across the country, or is it more up to the provinces?
There would be no way that I could see for a COVID-19 vaccine to be mandatory. It would actually go against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But then again, so many of the lockdown measures that we've all experienced would, go against the Charter as well. But making it mandatory would be difficult. Could, certain jobs, require that you have the vaccine? Perhaps. But you can't make it a mandatory. They haven't even been able to make testing mandatory in certain occupations. You would think that healthcare workers would be required, but they can't. In long-term care and health settings, they can't force the workers to be tested. Almost all of them are cooperating and being tested on a regular basis, thus the system's running along just fine. But no push for mandatory vaccine that I've heard.
Brian, millions of Canadians have had to rely on the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, otherwise known as CERB, over the past several months. But now that it's expired, what happens to those who still can't find work?
Well, this is a bit of bad planning on the Liberals' part, and we'll get into how prorogation fits into this in a moment. But there are 4 different benefit programs to replace CERB and use the EI system as a way to ease the pain for those who, because of various COVID shutdowns, because of the economic impact, are unable to find work. I know many people who were in between jobs or were out looking as COVID-19 hit. And look, the economy in this part of the country was going gangbusters. Jobs were aplenty. Then all of a sudden, nobody's hiring, things are shut down. And of course, we did shut down many industries as well. So it's right that governments step up and do something to help. And that's what they did with CERB. But CERB ended last Sunday. The application process for 2 of the replacement programs opens on October 4th. That is on this coming Sunday. So there's a week gap there. And then the next 2 programs open on October the 11th. Parliament has been shut down since August 18th. They could have been working on this in that time frame. Instead, what they did was prorogued because they wanted to get the WE scandal off the front pages, off of your TV newscast. They wanted us to stop talking about WE. Now, the Liberals have been frantic trying to get opposition support to pass this. The Conservatives have said, look, this is a massive omnibus bill. We don't want to stop Canadians from getting support, but you've shoved all kinds of other things in there. Let's split the bill. The Liberals and the NDP have said, no, the NDP is at least saying they're holding their nose to vote for it and get it through. But $50 billion in spending in 4.5 hours of debate is shocking, even during a pandemic.
Brian, the NDP supported the Liberals in their throne speech to ensure that Justin Trudeau was not defeated on a confidence vote. But now, Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, is saying he wants more from the Liberals for continued support. Is this almost like a form of political blackmail with the NDP holding all the cards?
Well, look, this is minority parliament. So you want the support of an opposition party, you've got to offer them something. And so I think that the Liberals, left out a couple of things from the throne speech and the economic support package on purpose. And then they gave the NDP what they wanted. The original plan to replace CERB would have gone from $500 a week or $2,000 a month down to $400 a week and about $1,600 a month. Well, the NDP said, no, it should stay at $2,000 a month. They gave the NDP what they wanted on that. They said, you're allowing people to claim this if they contract COVID-19. Well, what about if you have to self-isolate because a partner or someone in your home contracts COVID-19? You should also be able to access it. And there were, other examples of where they wanted the sick benefit pay added in. So they got that. Now they want a wealth tax. They want to come in and raise taxes on the wealthiest Canadians. The Trudeau government's already done this. I know that in Alberta, the former Notley government of the NDP did that. The Wynne government in Ontario did it. It never raises as much money as people think, and it's generally a bad idea economically, but it is something that the political left wants. So they want a wealth tax on top of the wealth taxes that already exist if the Liberals expect them to continue supporting them throughout the budget and throughout the fall.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer says with all of the measures dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, our deficit, Brian, this year will be over $320 billion and growing. How long can this be sustainable, especially with their debt now over $1 trillion?
Well, in the past, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said 1 or 2 years at most, but they're now saying, look, the effects of the pandemic are going to be felt for years. They're not exactly sure. It's difficult to forecast in this era, but they're saying we are going to be feeling this economically for a long time to come. And, $330 billion deficit, that used to be more than the entire federal budget. And not that long ago, Hal. We're talking about it at the beginning of the Trudeau government. So this is a massive level of spending. It's effectively doubling the spending of the federal government. And I understand that people want to ensure that Canadians get help. And I don't doubt that that is a noble goal for any government. But at a certain point, you have to say, how will we pay for this eventually? And this is something that, our kids and grandkids will be paying off down the road. But we've got to get to a point where, yes, people can get back to work. Look, I know that there are concerns about rising case numbers across the country, but in most provinces, hospitalizations, ICU admissions, deaths, those are not rising in the same level, at the same level as case counts at this point. And you've also got the fact that it is a much younger demographic contracting COVID-19 now, one that is far less likely to face serious ramifications or serious outcomes from this virus.
Especially with people under the age of 40, absolutely. Brian, internal government polling suggests public support for going back to stage 2 of the lockdown as cases keep rising, as you mentioned, especially in central Canada, Ontario and Quebec. Now, this can't be good for business owners who barely survived the first round of COVID-19. What would that actually look like where you are in central Canada?
Well, in Ontario, going back to stage 2, as they call it, that would mean closing down public libraries to everything except curbside pickup. It would shut down swimming pools, fitness centers, gyms, indoor dining, bars would close down. We've already seen restrictions on the size of groups that you can have in these locations. I can think of the restaurant downstairs in my building that has gone to enormous lengths to put in physical barriers between tables and spaced out their tables on top of that, and following all of these other measures. And now they're being told, despite all of this, you might be shut down again. 85% in Ontario. This is an Ipsos poll done for one of the Ontario government ministries. 1,000 people polled just last week, and 85% said they would support going back to stage 2 if cases continue to rise. And some people might say, well, they're just polling Liberals in downtown Toronto. That's not the case. This goes across political viewpoint. It goes across gender lines, age lines, every demographic. It goes across urban, suburban, and rural ridings. Even in rural areas, 79% say they would support it. So this is across the board support. And my guess is that by Thanksgiving, there's a good chance Ontario is back into stage 2. We just saw Quebec the other day announce closure of restaurants and other facilities for 28 days. That's their campaign. And a lot of people might say, well, it's just 28 days. But remember, back in March, we were told 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
And I spoke to a lot of restaurant owners here in Alberta, and they say if there's another lockdown like that here, 60 to 70% of those restaurants won't be around in a year from now. Brian, security for MPs on Parliament Hill has been beefed up recently after some disturbing events of harassment. Tell me more about that.
This latest one involved Jagmeet Singh, and it's a group that has decided that for some reason they feel that they can go around and do citizens arrest. It's a group that is often described as far right. I'm not sure what's right wing or conservative about it. They appear to believe that our political leaders have broken laws and they need to arrest them. They've tried to do a citizen's arrest on a Radio Canada, that's French CBC journalist, outside of their headquarters. And then earlier this week, this same man followed NDP leader Jagmeet Singh down Wellington Street from the Parliament buildings to an area that's adjacent to the Chateau Laurier, for people that know Ottawa. It's just next door, but there are House of Commons committee rooms there. He was walking down there, and this man and his accomplices were harassing him the whole way, filming it, trying to say that you're under arrest. Jagmeet Singh was being polite, not having any of it, continuing to walk on. At the end of the video, the man can be heard saying, "Next time I see you, we'll have a dance," which sounds like a street level threat. So the Parliamentary Protective Service is taking this seriously. They are saying that they're looking at increasing measures, but not saying exactly what those measures are.
Brian, we've long had the practice in Canada of our prime ministers flying on government jets. They do not have to use commercial flights, even for vacations. Now, you recently discovered Trudeau's staff were haggling over the Prime Minister having to pay back an extra $33.
Yeah, this was a bit of a surprise. Look, I have no problem with the Prime Minister using the government jet. Sometimes I've complained that he uses it too often. In his first several months in office, I think I counted 10 vacations that he took. That was excessive. But the fact is, we've decided as a country that for security reasons and many others, that the Prime Minister uses the government jet, the Challengers, or the larger Airbus when they need to, especially going overseas. Justin Trudeau used the jet 9 times in May of 2019, and one of those was for a flight to Chicago. So he'd gone out to Edmonton on business, government business. There were a pile of government staffers with him on the flight from Ottawa to Edmonton. When they left Edmonton, all but one of those staffers was thrown off the plane and told to fly back commercial, get on WestJet, get on Air Canada. You're not coming back with us, because he was going for Mother's Day weekend to see Margaret Trudeau's one-woman show in Chicago. And then he stayed there for a couple days and flew back to Ottawa. Now, the practice is that the Prime Minister pays back what an average Canadian would pay for a commercial flight. Except going through these documents, they're not only saying that this is the lowest possible commercial flight cost, but partway through they said, the Prime Minister's office, and they redacted the person's name, they said to the Department of National Defense, can you check for flights out of Midway? It was a $404 flight, Hal, from Chicago O'Hare to Ottawa. That's a very good price, let me tell you, for a one-way flight from Chicago to Ottawa. They said, can you check Midway for cheaper flights? They found it $33 cheaper, $33.85. Why is the Prime Minister's office haggling over his money when they don't look after our own? They don't look after taxpayers' money. They're not that concerned about making sure that you get the best value. So my big problem with this is they take the lowest possible flight, and you always know that that's like the 6 a.m. departure at a time that nobody wants to be up at. They don't take the average cost. They don't even charge business class. And this is for a private jet to fly him direct, not stopping for a layover anywhere else. So it was a bit disconcerting, and it makes the Prime Minister look like a cheapskate. So bad on his staff for that one.
Political reporter Brian Lilly joining me once again from Toronto. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.